right, here we are. We're back again for another episode of Solve for X, our special podcast that allows us to bring our community into the things that make us special in the Ysleta Independent School District and the people that make us special. And today we've got a great group of people. The topic is artificial intelligence and anything else associated with it, things like cybersecurity. And I am with the experts. I'm with Erick Buenrostro, who is a graduate of the Ysleta Independent School District, a student at Valle Verde Early College High School, a Gates Scholar, a graduate of St. Mary's University with both a baccalaureate degree and a master's degree in cybersecurity, so extremely well qualified. Our director, Veronica Alvidrez, who is the proverbial tip of the spear for the Ysleta Independent School District. All of these topics that we're going to discuss today fall under her scope of authority and expertise. And finally, we want a student's perspective. So we have Julyan Victorio from Bel Air High School, who's all into technology and all of the things that means to students. So I'm guessing we're going to get some different perspectives. Now, it's fair to say that for us more mature people like myself, artificial intelligence seems like it's something new that just surfaced, a year ago. But the reality is it's been part of our world for some time. It's just taken us older folks a little time to embrace it, accept it, but we're far from understanding it. So let's start with the director and some of the things that have been going on in the district for some time now, what it may look like moving into the future, and then we'll get some different perspectives.
Sure. So as you mentioned, it has been around. It's not a brand new topic yet. It's been around for quite some time. Back when it was first founded, right, like in the 1950s. And even in the 1980s, Mercedes was already testing like a driverless car. So it's been around for a very long time. We're immersed in it, whether we know it or not. Netflix recommendations, Alexa, Siri, it's all around us. Social media sites, I know this young man can attest to that. So it's all around us all the time. So it's just become such a hot topic recently. Like 2 years ago, we started really diving into really getting informed around what it means for us as educators and what role it's going to play in our realm, in our profession. So we really had to do a lot of studying. That's where we started in our department, really just learning the ins and outs of it, the terms and the buzzwords with AI, the types of AI, and how we could leverage it. Generative AI being the most popular one that came into play in education because it allows you to create new content. So, of course, your chatbots and whatnot. So it was really just understanding the ins and outs of how chatbots work. What does it do with our data? Where is our data going? And how safe it is. So we started with that, just foundational knowledge building in our department, really because we really wanted to take some steps moving forward, but in a very cautious way. So we've been looking at tools that have been emerging that teachers are using in classrooms. And so we started building a little bit of guidance, just setting in more guardrails for teachers as we started navigating this. And then also for students, so that students learn about the responsible and ethical use around AI, because that's really where it starts, like building foundational understanding before we just jump out and use these tools. So we've been working on that in our department. We're also working on getting some stakeholder input on that document that we've created. But really, that's where we're at, outlining a plan for how we're going to implement some of these tools. But we really are taking a lot of precaution, and we're slow in making the decision around which tools we're going to utilize and for what purposes. And it's really based on just safety for students, protecting our data, our privacy, and then using it in a very ethical way. So that's where we're headed right now. A lot of things going on in the back end.
Wow, it sounds like it. So if I understood correctly, back in the 1950s, 1980s, AI would collect millions of different sources of information and primarily use it to predict,
Right.
right? Or
all about
project,
automation.
right? And the generative piece of it means that you're no longer just predicting or projecting. You're actually using data to create new content, not an analysis of existing content that then allows you to determine that this young man, about every June goes online and buys a pair of Nikes. And so right around May and June, he is saturated with advertisements from Nike, right? That's more of a content already exists. This is what we know. It, in some ways, defines his behavior, his interests, his likes, and theoretically they could provide him with product before he even knows he wants or is going to purchase the product.
That's exactly
Correct.
But now the scary part is it's now moving into areas where people are using it to create new content that didn't exist prior, and that's taken us to some scary spots. And someone with your background who has spent a great deal of time studying in that world, in that domain, cybersecurity and just the ethos out there, what's that like at the university? What kind of people go into your discipline, and what is it that drove you into that field?
First of all, it's such a dynamic field because things change every day. I mean, quite literally, things probably change every hour to create new content, to create new tools. The beauty of the edtech space is that when we talk about a tool today, it might be gone tomorrow, and there's something new that comes and takes its place. So part of the way that this district is rolling out artificial intelligence is all about the guidelines, the privacy, the safety, and ultimately not the knowledge, not necessarily on the tool, but how to leverage the tools correctly. In the cybersecurity world, you're right. We have a big commercial use of artificial intelligence, the things that you'll see in your social medias, in your advertisement, in your content watching, and everything that exists in that. But the great thing is that there's always a barrier. So we do have a lot of the commercial side, but we also have education, where a lot of the tools, especially the tools that we as a district are investing our time in, have siloed data, meaning that when we use these tools, our data belongs to us still. We're not putting this out to the world. We're also not training their models, which is how artificial intelligence works. We're not using, or these tools are not leveraging our data for themselves. It truly just stays with us. And that is a big key about how we use artificial intelligence in districts and in cybersecurity. Our data is out there. Our data is always out there, whether that means as a personal user. We're a sequence of data for somebody's out there, and it's worth something to somebody. But in education, our job is to truly protect that as much as possible. And so the biggest thing with generative AI, and one of the things that we are cautious about, and as we teach about AI now, is you have to vet the data that comes from that generative content. It's not always accurate. And every good tool or resource out there will put a giant stamp on it that says, it's your responsibility as a user to still vet that data. Okay. And that's one of the big key things that we will have to inform our teachers about, our administrative teams about, but also our students. We want them to do the due diligence of getting the data and getting the content and leveraging it for time, but still being able to review that content and say, yes, this is truly accurate. This is a great launching point for me to move forward. That's the biggest thing of today's generation is we have a lot of misinformation. We have a lot of content that can be created very quickly. And so it's all about verifying the data.
So it seems to me that from an educator's perspective, a teacher's perspective, it can be incredibly valuable in terms of time, time management, multitasking, setting priorities. Teachers can create almost tailored lesson plans for each individual student in their classroom based on previous performance or assessments that they don't necessarily have to grade or correct, that AI can do that for them and then automatically adjust the instruction and the curriculum in a way that the student isn't being overwhelmed, but the student is still being challenged at the level that they are at, not necessarily at, the TEAC or the standard that that the state expects. It's about continuous growth for that individual student.
One of the greatest things we've heard in researching about artificial intelligence and getting our certifications and the trainings is that the time that we can save by using these artificial intelligence tools can then be spent back on the student, ensuring that those students are successful in the classroom by leveraging personalized plans, by leveraging, depth of content and knowledge, and being able to automatically take what exists and what we pay for and what we purchase, and then leveling that for every student in that classroom. A process that manually would take hours, if not days, can be done in minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm excited about. Probably the less exciting topic is for a lot of teachers, a lot of educators out there. They still struggle with when does it cross the line in terms of student utilization, where now the student is being relieved of learning and relying almost exclusively on AI to write a paper or an essay or answer questions, right? So what's that like out there among students? Is AI being used, in your opinion, appropriately for studies, for assignments, SAT exams, those type of things? Research.
In my opinion, I believe that the usage of AI can very well be, as he said, dynamic, but I do cross the lines at where many people overuse AI, especially students. I do believe that AI can be used as a tool for both teachers and students as like a boosting point, as like a point where they can rely on if and when they need help. However, through my experience and like from day-to-day school activities, I've seen many more students rely on AI usage, like as you said, for mainly essays, and I guess that's understandable since essays do take time, but it does really, I guess, affect how I view AI since I value my education a lot. I believe that one should put forced effort into their education and not simply just rely on a tool to get something that they need. And it's gotten troubling as well since, yes, students use AI, but it's also gotten to the point where teachers need AI themselves to figure out if students have used AI.
Right.
So that can also be worrying.
It's a mad cycle. You're not going to believe this, and I'm not sure that I've had enough chance to really think about it. But recently, I was in a meeting with a very well-known professor from the University of Texas at El Paso, and he made a compelling argument that it doesn't make any difference to him that his students are using or relying almost exclusively on AI to get the right answer in an engineering course. He'd rather have the right answer than be vulnerable to human error. And I think he used the analogy of when, and Veronica and I may be the only ones that remember this, when calculators were first introduced in the market back, I think I was in elementary school, and the immediate reaction was that it was cheating, that, being able to buy these little flimsy calculators that at the time they were probably overpriced, now you get them free if you want them, to do your math homework was cheating. And he said, it's not cheating. You should probably at least be able to demonstrate that you can do it without the calculator. And now when I go to schools and I look in an algebra class or a math class, the calculator is basically a mini computer that can compute almost anything mathematically, whether it's in a science classroom or a math classroom. And so this professor was saying, I'd rather there be a scientist or a group of engineers or aerospace engineers that are using or relying on generative artificial intelligence to make sure that the rocket shuttle is on the right trajectory when it enters the Earth's atmosphere, and not that the person that put together the plan did it with a pen and paper and is off just a little bit that results in some kind of catastrophic event. So do you see that happening with attitudes in classrooms by teachers where they start realizing if the person knows how to use AI in a way, because actually using AI can be a little bit complicated. You need to practice quite a bit because the prompt is everything, right? And if you're not comfortable with the prompt, right, which means you should have some background in what you're prompting, then the answer you get's probably not going to be accurate. Do any of you ever see a time when teachers will become less and less worried about whether or not the student relied entirely on AI or just used it as a tool?
I do believe that, because think about when the internet first came about and everybody could Google search, because everybody thought, oh my gosh, that's the end of education. Everybody's just going to be searching for the answer and they're going to get the answer instantaneously. And we're still here. We're still learning. We're still educating. We got through that era. So I see this becoming something similar to that. However, the advancements that are being made, I mean, in such exponential, gains around what's coming in the future, that we need to prepare our students to be able to use it. But going back to a comment that you made about overuse, because that is a big fear, right? Overuse will stifle creativity. It'll stifle autonomy. It'll stifle problem solving if you overuse something. I think more than anything now, we need to focus on a theme that is not uncommon to educators: critical thinking. So we need to continue to build that skill of critical thinking into our students, and build in them teach them that now more than ever is the time to ask questions. Now more than ever is the time to ask questions, not around how AI works, because those are valid, good questions, but also the why we're using it. Should we be using it? Now more than ever is the time to question the validity of what you're getting. And so I think we really need to go back to our students and start honing in and teaching them on, it's all about creative thinking and problem solving. You don't lose that skill with the overuse. But I can definitely see what you're saying about feeling like, well, you're taking the easy route because you're putting everything into a chatbot and getting the answer, and you're really not learning. And I heard a presentation not too long ago. Actually, we came back from TCA just last week. And one of the presenters said, educating yourself, I'm glad that you said that about you value your education, because at the end of the day, it is really about that, right? We need to value our education. And so if knowledge is worth the work for us, then we should put in the work.
Yeah, because I could see an entire English comp class receive a prompt from a teacher. If all 30 of the students drop the prompt into an AI, essays are going to lose any diversity. They're all going to sound like each other instead of like the individual, the author that has, I think, a responsibility to add their perspective, their experiences, their values, their beliefs. And if you have 30 students rely on AI the same way for the same prompt, you're going to get a very similar essay from all 30 of them, and it's going to be void of any of those personal stories or those personal sentiments. I am, like I said, very ignorant on a lot of things. So why are companies like NVIDIA and this new one called DeepSeek, why are they so important to this whole AI conversation? Are they chip builders?
Yeah, so on the infrastructure side of the house, these are, you look at companies like NVIDIA who create processors. This is what farms and these massive data centers use to leverage all this data, because we're talking trillions and trillions of processing and just data centers. And so when we talk about these companies, when we talk about what governments and different organizations use, it's become a big conversation, because everybody wants this power. Everybody wants to harness the power of artificial intelligence, because it's the big disruptor today. And so again, when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's all about balance. We want to make sure that it's used effectively and it's used when it's necessary, but at the same time that we don't over rely. And so companies that have created these, that have kind of put all their money in the bank on artificial intelligence, even in our own edtech space, we've looked at tools that we saw one year and are gone the next, because bigger companies have come and taken the space. but they play a big stake in the game because they develop the AI that we use on a regular basis, whether that means big corporations or small. But it's important that we as educators define what that balance is.
So products and programs can become obsolete overnight.
Absolutely.
You go to bed one day, you wake up the next day, and something new, more exciting, more powerful, more relevant has made yesterday's amazing product obsolete, and here we go, we're running. I'd heard that in the history of man, history was typically defined as long periods of stability with a very short period of change. Something, the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment period, and that today it's been flipped on its head. It's long periods of accelerated change with maybe a very short period of stability.
That's right.
Do you agree with that?
We're in the AI renaissance today.
Yeah.
The AI renaissance.
And like it or not, we're in a race, really, as a
It
nation.
feels like it.
And with the creation of the DeepSeek, that was like a game changer just because they made it so cost effective to produce and build something that, and I don't know the ins and outs, the technical, but I was listening to a podcast and they were using a bunch of technical terms that didn't make sense to me because that's not his background, not my background. But what I was gathering from it is it's a game changer because it processes the rate at which it processes data and can give you these responses and outputs is huge in what they're doing, and then the cost associated with building it is relatively low right now. We don't know that it'll stay that way, but I think that's why it's also such a big game changer for artificial intelligence. But I mean, even with the signing of the 500 billion investment into artificial intelligence that just happened, they're going to be building plants and institutions where that's what they're working on. And so we're in a race to
always find the best.
Because it's a matter of national security.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Because truly, you can, in the world of the internet, like Veronica said, the internet really exploded about 20 years ago and became what it is today. But you can probably find almost anything on the internet, and with enough time. With artificial intelligence, you can probably find that in seconds, if not faster than that, because truly it's all about that prompt. It's all about how you format that question, but it has access to data that we don't know.
Right.
A lot of the models that build artificial intelligence are not transparent. We don't know what's that data that's programming that model. And so it develops a bias. A lot of the biases that artificial intelligence can have is significant. It can be noted. And so it has to be always, that data that produces, it has to be vetted always.
Right. Yeah, I've heard even people mention that the public school systems, the education apparatus, should really reconsider whether or not having students study U.S. history or world history is as pertinent anymore, given that, to your point, it'll take you 2 or 3 seconds to find any answer to any question that has anything to do with history. Because if it's happened, it's somewhere, and you can get down to the detail. I think the important part, though, that they're missing is that, yes, it's great to be able to quickly know the date and place where, the Russian Revolution started or the American Revolution. But the value doesn't come in names and dates and recalling. The value comes in understanding what elements are present that lead to revolution. Because some can argue there are some things happening in the world and in our country right now that look a lot like the circumstances prior to all of these revolutions that we've had throughout history. So from a student's standpoint, a lot of students aren't taking it very serious. A lot of students are maybe substituting what's available in these AI programs, these chatbots, to quickly turn in homework, to perform well when it comes to homework. Does it help at all when it comes to assessments, though? When you actually have to sit down and take an assessment?
I would say that it varies, because I know that the reason with AI being like so helpful, especially during assessment, is because simply students can just like go into another tab and just go to AI through there. However,
While they're taking the assessment, you mean just click back and forth?
there is this one feature for Google Forms that I know of, that teachers can lock the test. And it's the same thing with like Eduphoria lockdown browser, that they specifically lock the test so students don't use AI or don't use other like tools like Google or like specific things like that. And I think that yes, AI can help in assessments, but mainly for like the studying portion as to like what can be in an assessment, rather than just like, oh, looking at assessments from prior years and then like searching up answers through those prior assessments and then getting answers. I think it would be a better use, or like a better process to like use AI to study,
Yeah.
rather than just like quickly get at the answer, then get an answer.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. I have a 17-year-old son that the way he gets ready for a test is to have AI create a test. So he says, make me a 50-question test on, this is the topic, and it'll spit it out, and then he'll start taking the assessment. It'll grade it. It'll tell him how he performed. If he doesn't perform well, he'll have them make him another assessment after he's had a chance to review the content. And so I think that's a positive way of using AI as a student. How do you feel about where we are as a district in terms of the vulnerabilities out there, the safety, the security, as you mentioned earlier, you go to great lengths to make sure that you vet products and programs out there before they become available, certainly to students whose parents rely on us to protect them from, I guess it's called the dark web, or things that happen outside of, the ethical and healthy use of technology. And I know recently you put together a great manual that sort of captures where we are as a district. What would you say? We're still in a very organic place, or have we started to kind of move forward?
So we have been moving forward, and I mean, the reality is when we started conducting or gathering data like through surveys, we realized really quickly that a lot of our teachers were already using the tools. They were already using them, or they felt comfortable using them, or they had knowledge of different tools that they were using. So we quickly learned or realized that we need to quickly catch up, right? And start doing putting the guidance together, but at the same time, going back and really doing some foundational training and understanding of just the forms of AI that exist, what AI really is, in terms of machine learning, deep learning, the types, the narrow, the weak, the generative. So just educating our students, but then also our teachers. So some of the things we started doing was rolling out trainings with our instructional tech teachers, and we did a couple of turnaround trainings where we had them actually go back to staff and train on just those foundational things, because you have to start there. They have to understand how a bot works and why this bot is different than this bot, depending on what data is being fed to it, where it gets its data from.
Mm-hmm.
A ChatGPT scours the internet for data, where a Gemini is a little bit more locked to the predetermined data sets that are fed to it. So there's some limitations. So it's really just starting with foundational. And we started doing that this last year as a district at the same time that we were rolling out, trying to put together the guidance. But some of the things we included in what we put together was being very transparent about the risks and the benefits associated with it, just putting in some guardrails for teachers to use, and to start building AI literacy with our students at a very young age.
Right.
Just think before you use AI. Think about the tools. Think about the knowledge. So we created some acronyms and some really good visuals that we are now sharing through our trainings and having them turn those around. So there's still a lot of work to do, but I think moving forward, we're going to continue to collect stakeholder input. And I was just sharing with this young man, you need to give me your information before you leave, because I want to reach out to him to see how I can get the student perspective. There are student sections in the guidance, tools that are in there specific to when is it appropriate for me to use AI? When should I use it? When should I not? And how heavily should I rely on it for a particular assignment? Again, guided by the teacher and at the teacher's discretion. But all of those tools we've worked on and built, it's now just a matter of starting to roll them out, but then also gathering feedback from our young scholars at the schools, because the reality is we're preparing them for jobs that don't exist.
Right.
And so they need to have an understanding of how these tools work.
Right.
So that's really where we're at right now. But looking forward, we want to continue next year to build just foundational understanding, literacy, but then focus on the responsible use. And then when we vet tools out with teachers, we really want to leverage tools that are safe, that we've looked at through making sure that they're FERPA, COPA compliant, everything that we need to check in terms of safety so that it protects our data. And then so being very deliberate about what tools we select. So teaching those tools through content and tied to content. So for example, we did training on one particular tool called Magic School, and we used it focused solely on providing students with writing feedback. And that was based on data, decision in collaboration with our academics department, because we know that kids are struggling with the short constructed and the extended constructed responses. And so one of the drawbacks that teachers have is they're not able to give kids instant feedback on every writing piece they turn in, especially at the secondary level.
Right.
It's such a huge task for a teacher to read through everybody's. Well, with the Magic School tool, you can instantly give students feedback, that is in alignment with a rubric that we can actually create that's aligned to the state rubric. So learning how to use these tools like that in content, I think, is more meaningful and relevant for a teacher as they're planning. Instead of just saying, oh, let's do a training on this one tool. It's got all these bells and whistles. It's going to be very overwhelming for the educator.
Sure.
And it is going to have the wow factor. And they're going to say, wow, this is amazing. But then it's going to wear off. The shininess is going to wear off. They're going to go back to their classroom and continue doing what they've been doing.
It was a drink of water from a fire hose, right? And, one of the things that you mentioned that I think is interesting is that the state, the Texas Education Agency, is actually using AI to correct those responses too, right? I'm going to flip this thing on its head and then we're going to finish up. So sometimes there's a lot of criticism that students are relying too heavily on AI, right? One of the silver linings of the pandemic, and there aren't too many of them, is that prior to the pandemic, you had a lot of teachers, especially more mature teachers, who did not embrace technology, weren't excited about, one-to-one devices, weren't as excited about using their digital device beyond taking attendance, entering grades. The pandemic put us in a situation where we were backed into a corner, and everybody, in order to deliver online or distance learning to students who were staying home and teachers who eventually stayed home as well, is that everybody had to have at least a rudimentary understanding of how they could use their digital device to leverage learning. You fast forward, and these teachers now realize, right, that, hey, I can use this to really relieve a lot of responsibilities from me as a teacher. Not in our district, but I've heard in other districts, right? And so one of the unintended consequences of this pandemic and this heavy reliance on digital devices is that when we came back, it was almost as if the teacher was still at their home and they still were delivering instruction via an online platform, even though the students were sitting in desks right in front of them, and they simply took what they were doing during the pandemic and they transferred it to the four corners of the classroom. And so you saw a lot of less direct instruction, a lot less small group and interaction and collaboration. And I think we've gotten a little bit away from that. Is that still happening where you have, no names please, or schools or anything like that, you have teachers that you think not only are the students over relying on AI for responses and homework and essays, but you realize that a lot of teachers are starting to rely on it for the lesson plan and the content and Is that happening?
From my personal experience, I don't see it happening, especially for like my teachers. Most of my teachers, whether it be on the core subjects, like for what I'm taking right now, physics, pre-calculus, English, and U.S. history, most of them are still interactive. They want us to be interactive since they understand the consequences that come with AI, especially my U.S. history teacher and my English teacher. They have mentioned various times that they don't want us using AI, that they do know when a student is using AI and have even gone out to like outright say that that's bad, that you're not supposed to use AI, especially on like important subjects as your core.
It's a form of plagiarism to some, right? Yeah.
I'd say that.
Well, that's why we're an A-rated district, because we have teachers like the teachers that you're talking about right now.
And well, for what I seem to believe, that I'd say that the pandemic impact us, all of us really, because it was something new, mainly that none of us had ever seen or even thought of that could even happen.
And what grade were you in when school closed?
I was a 7th grader.
Okay, so you spent your entire 7th grade year at home, or was it your 8th grade year?
It was my 8th grade year. Yes, 7th grade is when it started.
And so during the 8th grade, when you theoretically graduated from 8th grade, you had spent a year at home and became a freshman. Now is the first time that you were back in the classroom.
Yeah, like by the end of like 8th grade year, I was already back, and it was tough. I could tell that many students had gotten less interactive. Like I do notice even right now at times that for some of my classes, when it comes to like interactiveness between or collaboration among students, it can be very difficult since most people are just quiet, since they don't necessarily want to communicate.
A lot of earbuds out there, a lot of headphones. Well, we'll get you guys back in the near future, and appreciate you both taking care of us when it comes to security, keeping our students safe, providing training and staff development to our teachers in small little bites at a time so it doesn't become overwhelming. And we certainly appreciate your perspective. We're going to probably start reaching out. We just invited Thought Exchange into the conversation. It's a program that allows us to get your immediate feedback, almost like a survey. And based on how you respond, it doesn't let you off the hook. It keeps digging deeper into why you feel that way or how you arrived at that. And it's going to give us really a chance to do that with students, with employees and teachers, especially teachers, and with parents, so that it's not just about the what you think, it's the why you think that. You know, what's making you think that way, so that we can be better, a better school system, a better school district to the students in the Ysleta Independent School District. So thank you all very, very much. I appreciate you doing this for me, and I hope our watchers realize that you guys have us in a great place. And congratulations to you. And you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Gate Scholar. That means they paid for everything, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've never experienced that.
That's a great blessing, I'll tell you that.
I bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.